Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. You're here because you want to learn about how to live a healthier life, how to live more sustainably, how to take your everyday actions and make them work for you and the planet. Sometimes it might feel like you've got this figured out, and other times you probably feel lost. That's why I'm here. Together, we will learn how to live happier, healthier lives without the need to be perfect, and always allowing space for a little cluelessness on this journey to living a more conscious life. Today on the podcast, I talk to Sabs Katz. Sabs is a Brooklyn-based advocate of conscious, intentional, and holistic living. She is also the co-founder of Intersectional Environmentalists. She has long inspired me, and I know she will do the same for you. This podcast is supported by Who Gives a Crap. Who Gives a Crap is an eco-friendly toilet paper company that donates 50% of its profits to help ensure everyone has access to clean water and a toilet within our lifetime. Who Gives a Crap has donated almost $8 million to nonprofit organizations who help provide clean water and toilets all over the world. Who Gives a Crap is delivered straight to your door with carbon neutral delivery. I love that it comes that way. I don't have to think about it. It's an automatic subscription, and I want you to try it. You can check out Who Gives a Crap and get $10 off your first order over $54 with the code CARLY10. That's CARLY 10, or check out the link in the show notes. The podcast is called Consciously Clueless, and that came from this place of me being like, man, sometimes you feel like you totally have this whole life thing figured out, and then other times you have no freaking clue what's going on and everything in between, and that's all valid. Where are you feeling right now in this moment on a scale of clueless to consciousness, whatever that means to you?
I would say I am almost too conscious.
Uh-oh.
I think one thing that has been taking up a lot of space in my mind right now is just like the news and thinking about anti-Semitism as, a Jewish person. And so I think that is kind of the overload of information has led to the too conscious of things. It would maybe be better if I distance myself a little bit from the news cycle and the comment sections that are just like so terrifying.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think if anything, I'm working on setting better boundaries with consuming media, social media, culture, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good for you. That makes a lot of sense. So when you go on your website, it says environmentalist, vegan, and Jewess. And I'm curious if, since you just, mentioned all of the terrifying anti-Semitism going on, specifically in our country, but in the world, I'm curious if that was always something you had on there, or if that is something you intentionally added later, if you wanted to chat about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I actually didn't always have it. And frankly, I didn't even really start talking about my Jewish culture until probably a couple years ago. So I've content creation for the last, I want to say 6+ years. And it never really felt like something that I needed to speak about. I think historically, I've also had to unpack my own internalized anti-Semitism and, just get comfortable with talking about it, because I feel like oftentimes in the past have just been in this place of, oh, well, there are so many other people who are facing, oppression. Why, I don't even need to speak up about my own, because it doesn't feel maybe timely, or maybe as important, or as dangerous. But I grew up in a very Jewish community, not super religious by any means, but I was so consistently surrounded by Jewish people that I just assumed people knew, and assumed that people had somewhat of a level of understanding. And even, anti-Semitism is so insidious, and that even a lot of Jewish people don't even necessarily know what it looks like. It, has had the last 3,000 years to evolve and find new ways to scapegoat us as like these evil conspirators who are trying to take over the world. And, when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump and Ye are all talking about, these ridiculous conspiracy theories, and people kind of just look the other way, or they don't even realize that it's anti-Semitic. I think that's the real problem is people don't even know what to look for. So I hope that by talking about it and by standing, as a proud Jewess, that hopefully people will be able to see the reality and not be, whatever people are saying about us.
I appreciate that and your willingness to put that forward, especially at a time that I'm sure is really scary to do so. And I think it's pretty beautiful too to marry that piece, just one piece of your identity with all these other things, right? Like when you see that kind of like list of things that you want to share from your website, and it's like environmentalist, vegan, Jewess, and it's just this like nice normalizing of all these things being like, this is one person.
Yeah. I think, and frankly, a lot of my reasoning, a lot of the root of why I have been in a lot of social justice spaces is because I remember hearing my grandparents' Holocaust stories and thinking that, if I was alive at the time and I were not Jewish or any other group that was targeted by the Nazis, there were many, I would want to be the type of person who didn't just stand by and accept that things were going on. I would want to use my voice, even if that meant annoying people or that meant, rubbing people the wrong way, because at the end of the day, people's lives are at stake. And that has really kind of been a lot of my motivation for getting into this work.
In this work, do you mean environmentalism in kind of general, or just activism?
I would say both, but also largely within intersectional environmentalism. Obviously, I am a co-founder of Intersectional Environmentalist. Our founder, Leah Thomas, created this organization that is just so beautiful and really honors and respects and acknowledges the ways that people with different intersecting identities approach the environment and, have different relationships with the environment, and how we really need to honor that and not, have such focused myopic perspectives when it comes to environmentalism, because when it comes to the planet, I think it's so easy for people to just be like, conservation, animals, biodiversity, save the whales. And it's like, okay, but also there are people in Flint, Michigan, who still are not drinking clean water, like still don't have access to clean water.
Save the whales looks cuter on a t-shirt than like save each other.
Right. And I think that we historically have just been so afraid to talk about things that are deemed political when it's like, no, actually BIPOC should not be considered political. Why is that a political conversation when people's lives are at stake or people's well-being? Most recently at Pakistan and in Nigeria, there's been terrible flooding and people are dying and nobody's talking about it. So hopefully, with this work that we're doing in terms of education and promoting climate optimism and sharing the solutions that are out there, we can encourage people to keep talking about it and find new ways to talk about environmentalism in a way that isn't just so apolitical.
Yeah. Was it your interest in environmentalism or veganism? Like, which kind of domino fell into the other?
So back the summer after my freshman year of college, I read this book called Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer.
Yeah, that's a doozy.
Yeah, so I remember reading it, and I think definitely the most impactful part was talking about the fishing industry and bycatch, and how there's about 5 pounds of bycatch for every 1 pound of fish that was intended to be caught. And all that bycatch is just thrown back into the ocean as just carcasses. And just the fact that that is even a practice is so
a wildly accepted practice.
Yeah. And no accountability for that. And we're seeing that there's going to be more plastic in the oceans than there are fish by, I want to say, like 2030 or 2050 or something like that. Even the fact that
it feels like it's soon.
Yeah, within our, very much within our lifetimes. And that's really terrifying. And so I picked up that book, went vegetarian pretty soon after, and then a year later, on my 1 year vegetarian anniversary, I went vegan and have been vegan for the last 7 years. And then a couple months after I went vegan, a friend and I were going to move in together. This is, now we're junior year of college. We were going to move in together for the semester, and she had heard about this zero waste lifestyle, and she was like, let's try it out. And I was so skeptical. I was like, what is this? So we tried it out for a couple of months. After the initial habit changes, it ended up being a lot easier than it was at first.
Yeah.
At least for me, being within whatever, having access to so many resources that I'm able to have, fully recognize that not everyone has access to these resources. But I ended up really appreciating the lifestyle and how it encouraged us to slow down and think really consciously and intentionally about what we wanted to support and how we wanted to spend our time, all that kind of stuff. So that it all kind of accumulated around the same summer. So I would say it was the veganism first, and then the environmentalism. But I always, growing up, I always kind of had an affinity towards sustainability. I remember when I grew up in Houston, and I remember when the city rolled out the recycling program, and I was recycling all my family's pieces of paper. I was like, none of this is going to go to the trash. And that was always, something that I was excited about. But, only really in college is when I really tried to adopt habits and really take it on in a more intentional and thoughtful way.
And was it at that time that you realized that you wanted to make this, a career?
I knew that it was my passion work, and in an ideal world, I would end up working at a place that really aligned with these passions. I actually majored in advertising in college.
Oh, wow.
Seems really interesting. And frankly, when I was in college, I knew that I never really wanted to go into any sort of ad agency because it seemed really competitive and cutthroat and dog eat dog type of environment, which is really not my vibe. I knew that I, if anything, wanted to go into like an in-house marketing team or work at a nonprofit, that kind of thing. But advertising seems like the vein of capitalism, which in many ways it is, but also when you really break it down, you're just trying to reach an audience with your message. And whether that message is selling BMWs and Barbies, that's one thing. But if you want to promote the message of sustainability and environmentalism and reducing meat consumption, that's also like an opportunity to do that as well.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many times when producing content, I'm thinking of it as like, is this marketable? I mean, is this piece of content marketable, for better or for worse, I guess? But it is the idea of like you're trying to sell this idea and have people listen to that. So I think it's directly related.
For sure. And it's really, if anything, it's just a medium, right? And so it's a medium that can be exploited for bad, but it can also be a medium that's exploited for good. And we're seeing that with social media nowadays. Obviously, there's a ton of not great stuff on social media, but there's also a lot of beautiful community that you can build and a lot of inspiration that you can share and, motivation, empowerment, encouragement. And I don't know where I would be were it not for social media. So, as terrible as it can be, it also has a silver lining, I'd like to think.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Of course, we're both content creators and we're like, it's not all bad.
For sure.
But I really do believe that, like that there's a lot of power. And I think we've seen that over the last few years as that has evolved, the power of people and what can happen through an online movement.
I think a lot of people tend to really knock online digital activism in a way. And not to say that that is the only form of activism one should take or one can take, but when we say something like that, it also excludes people who have disabilities who might not be able to go to protests or might not be able to do all of the phone banking and all the other whatever traditional forms of activism one might have. So that's where intersectionality really comes into play and recognizes that like we all have an opportunity to use our voices, and as long as we're using our voice, then we should continue doing so, no matter what we pass through.
Right. And I was thinking too, as you were saying, marketing with some of the movements is sometimes I'm like, we need a marketing shift. Like we need a marketing shift in how we're talking about some of these things. And I don't know, I know that you have a similar approach in terms of like climate optimism and the way you approach these conversations, but I don't know how many Facebook groups I've had to leave now for being like attacked. I guess that's the flip side of the coin, right? Is just sometimes I'm like, but guys, we're not marketing this well. I hear you, but we're not marketing this like concept well. People are shutting down.
Yeah. And psychologically speaking, it makes a lot of sense because when you're faced with this huge concept that how can one single person take that on, it's no wonder that so many people nowadays are facing eco anxiety. And I think I read statistics somewhere that said like a third or half of all Gen Z people are feeling anxious about the future of the planet, among other generations as well. I'm a millennial. Well, I'm a zillennial, but now I feel like there's just a lot of that doom and gloom, and it really sometimes can motivate people, but for the most part, I think people just kind of turn away because it is such a large concept. It's so hard to even figure out what the first step is to take. So at least with IE, our nonprofit organization, we're really trying to flag that we have all the solutions out there when it comes to saving the planet. Literally, we have all of the solutions. We know exactly what we need to do. And we can do it tomorrow if we really wanted to. But governments and corporations and
capitalism,
white supremacy, colonialism, imperialism, all of the various forms of oppression, which are rooted in I am entitled to XYZ, whether that is resources, money, the planet, all of that stuff. And rather than working within a collective mindset and recognizing that the planet is the one thing we all have in common, there are people who are hoarding wealth, people who are hoarding power, and at the expense of human lives and non-human lives as well. So there definitely needs to be a shift. And, I'm going to keep talking about IE because
well, that was kind of what I wanted to know about more. So please tell us about intersectional environmentalism more, the nonprofit. Like, how did that come to be, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so our founder Leah Thomas, back in June of 2020, created this Instagram post that ended up going viral. Yeah, it said environmentalists for Black Lives Matter, and it defined intersectional environmentalism. It had an intersectional environmentalist pledge. And intersectional environmentalism wasn't necessarily a term that had been used as widely as it is nowadays. Inspired by the work of Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined intersectional theory, who she herself was inspired by the Combahee River Collective. It is a framework that really encourages us to look at how our identities impact the way that we view the world and the way that the world views us. So with intersectional environmentalist, we wanted to create a platform that honors all of those different legacies. And I think there were a lot of people talking about how, oh, well, social justice doesn't hit my lane. I don't really have anything to say about this. But social justice is so interconnected with any single thing that you're passionate about, whether it's fashion, whether it's education, whether it's veganism, whether it's, any number of things. So with Leah, our founder, myself, and then fellow co-founders Deandra Marisette and Phil Aiken, we created a website and we created an Instagram page that started off just like talking about intersectional environmentalism and why it's something that people should care about. And it ended up blowing up. And 2.5 years later, we are here at over 430,000 Instagram followers, which is incredible.
Damn.
We have a number of resources on our website. We create these really cool resource toolkits for people who want to take a deep dive on different topics. Obviously, we share a lot of information on our Instagram page that is accessible and understandable because we recognize that there's a lot of jargon in the world and it only alienates people, and we want everybody to be able to participate in these conversations. We also have a podcast called The Joy Report that is very, very much rooted in climate optimism and storytelling and sharing solutions and sharing positive news stories. So that's one thing that we're really excited about. And then finally, this year we launched a brand new program called Earth Sessions, which are climate justice concerts for people and the planet. And we're really aiming to bring people together. There's so much beauty in gathering and community building and just finding out who your neighbors are. We found that a lot of the feedback we were hearing or, questions that we were getting is like, how do I get involved? Where do I start?
Right. Where do I start?
Exactly. So with Earth Sessions, we hope to create these joyful, enjoyable spaces where you can connect with other environmentalists while also learning. We have an educational portion of each show, so usually that'll be an educational panel featuring a leader of a local organization. Sometimes we do book giveaways. At our most recent concert, we gave away over 200 books to attendees about environmental justice, and really just making learning and taking action exciting and encouraging people to connect again with those neighbors. And maybe even after Earth Sessions is out of the city where we host the show, people will get together with one another and volunteer at a local garden or get involved with the organization that we featured as part of the show. And so I think with all of these different opportunities through digital spaces, through audio, through our podcast, through Earth Sessions, we're really trying to meet people where they're at. And we need as many voices as possible if we want a chance at a habitable future.
I love all the different lanes that you are working to intrigue people, really, like to have, it's marketing back to it, to interest different people. I'm wondering if this is something you see growing into an organization that would have like chapters or something. Because I'm thinking, as you're describing this, I'm like, oh man, I wish I could like run something like that in my small town in Minnesota. Like a chapter of that or something.
Something that we've definitely spoken about in the past. I think we just don't have a large enough team to really manage something like that right now. But a lot of people have mentioned interest, and we've even heard of people who are encouraging their colleges to change their curriculums, and people are using our resources in their school courses, all that kind of stuff. So that is always really exciting to hear. I think it's, again, something that we have considered, but right now, because we're such a small team and we're only 2.5 years in, we still have a whole future ahead of us. It's definitely not off the table, but to be determined.
Yeah, I think that would be really great in terms of local organizing.
Yeah, we also know, and where possible, try to support and amplify the grassroots organizations and local groups that are already doing all the work. I think one of the questions we had with creating our own chapters is we don't want to necessarily step on those local organizations who are already doing really great work. So if any, at least for the time being, until we make a decision if that's something that we want to do, we can always encourage people to get involved in those local organizations. I'm based in Brooklyn, and a great example of a local organization is the No North Brooklyn Pipeline group. There is actively a fracked pipeline being built in Brooklyn in Black and Brown communities. And rather than like us currently having like an IE chapter, we can always encourage people to connect with those local organizations like the No North Brooklyn Pipeline group. So I think, yeah, it's in the works potentially, but for now, there's so many incredible organizations out there that like are already doing all the great work.
This podcast is supported by North. North's mission is to provide unique and innovative cannabis products to help bring peace, calm, and healthy alternatives to their consumers. All of their products have been meticulously designed and formulated by co-founders Brandon and Mike to ensure that their customers receive nothing but the highest quality. Currently, they offer 3 product lines: Vibes, a THC CBD seltzer; Gummies, THC gummies; and Fusions, a CBD wellness beverage. I'm a huge fan of the THC CBD seltzer. My current favorite flavor, blackberry mango. Use code CARLY15 to get 15% off your order at drinkthenorth.com. That's CARLY15, or hit the link in the show notes. Enjoy drinking the North. This podcast is supported by Parade Underwear. Parade believes that the materials that touch your skin should be as comfortable as possible, wherever life takes you. That's why their styles come in a large range of fabrics, from seamless universal that disappears under clothes to cozy waffles plush comfort that keep you comfy on every occasion. Parade understands that everyone deserves to express themselves however they choose, because we're all unique. And Parade knows that there's no parade without our planet. They strive to make all of their products from reclaimed, recycled, responsible, renewable, or regenerative materials. This is really a win-win-win. I love Parade. I've been wearing them for a while now, and I can't recommend them enough. And of course, we love the mission. Use code consciously.carly for 20% off your first order. That's CONSCIOUSLY.CARLY, consciously.carly. Enjoy your new undies.
Right. Yeah, that's really important too, because sometimes within the movement, it gets so fractured when everyone thinks they have the solution. And then there can be a lot of groups trying to accomplish the same goal and maybe don't even know it.
Yeah, I think building coalition is something that we have really wanted to do since the very beginning. And we are definitely, as we continue on, just connecting with more organizations in so many different realms, whether that is within climate storytelling or artivism, mining art and activism, whether that's local grassroots organizing, whether that is, local gardens and urban farms and all that kind of stuff. It's really nice to be able to amplify one another, because at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same goal, and we shouldn't be so disjointed as many,
right.
A lot of different movements have been in the past. That's what intersectional environmentalism is all about, is recognizing that we all are so interconnected, and we should really work together in order for us to amplify our message.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and I have both kind of said this phrase of where to start, that it's something that we obviously both hear frequently or see frequently, where it's like, okay, you've got someone maybe that comes to one of these earth sessions. They're like, my mind is completely blown apart. I get it. I want to be involved. If someone says to you, where do I start? Maybe that's an individual level, maybe that's a more community, political level, whatever it is. Where do you kind of tell people? What do you advise if someone actually does ask you, like, oh shit, now what?
Yeah, we really always want to encourage people to use their skills and the things that they're passionate about and combine those two. So if you're the type of person who loves to get their hands dirty, go volunteer at an urban garden. If you're the type of person who's obsessed with compost, go volunteer at like a compost drop-off. If you're the type of person who likes to share stories or likes to make friends or network or talk to people, go to like an environmental event, or go to, a meeting for one of these like grassroots organizations, and just like start talking to people. If you're the type of person who likes to hop on the phone and talk to people, do phone banking for your local election. It's really about finding what you enjoy doing and doing it, rather than forcing yourself into these boxes. I personally love going to a protest, but I know not everybody likes going to protests. I would never encourage somebody to do that who wasn't passionate about it. So finding whatever it is that you're passionate about and doing that is what I would always encourage.
I love that you specifically said encourage someone to use the skills they already have, because it becomes so much less intimidating when you're saying like, okay, so what lights you up? What do you do already that can be directly translated into making a difference? Is so much less intimidating as a starting point than telling someone like, okay, you have to learn XYZ to be a environmentalist, and that's how you don't have this skill yet. I love that.
Yeah, I think that people get, like you just said, people get really intimidated. And it's hard, especially if you're so new starting out in this space and you don't have a bunch of friends who are already in this space, knowing where to start. It's not always a Google away. And so sometimes it is, and finding, the Facebook groups or finding the local environmental justice issues in your neighborhood or in your area is a Google away. So if you are listening to this and you don't know where to start, then just search like local environmental justice issues in your neighborhood. We as individuals have so much more power when it comes to local issues. And, you can encourage your friends to come to events or, listen or, go to a city hall meeting, a town hall meeting and use your voice there. I think we often see these really huge issues and, as individuals think that it's so hard to do anything that's impactful, but in your local community, your voice goes so much farther. And we need people who are active within every single community. And if we had one person within every family or one person within every friend group who was taking action, imagine the impact that we could have on all those individuals in our lives.
Right.
I think we often knock individual action for many reasons, but we also forget the ripple effect that we tend to have, even, in doing our own thing, not necessarily forcing others to do it. When people see that you're doing it and you're doing it happily and successfully and passionately, and other people see that and say, oh, there's one thing that I can do for the planet or one thing that I can do for animals that, can make an impact. That becomes that much more powerful. And rather than shaming people into changing, you're empowering them into change. And I think that's really great.
Shaming people versus empowering people to change. That's a good distinction to make, because I've talked about this on the pod before, but I definitely went through like a very cliche angry vegan phase. And
we all do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your validation. And I just was like, no one's listening to me. I have the solution. This is crazy. We've been lied to our whole lives. You should listen to me. Turns out that wasn't the cutest way to get people in my life to get on board. And as I evolved through that and backed down a little bit and kind of really took some self-assessment with that approach, I had more people reaching out to me on their own to talk about going vegan, or people in my family who, like, there are some people who eat more vegan now because of that, but it didn't happen until I like shut up a little bit, it with the shaming that I didn't even totally understand that I was doing, because I thought I was like saving the world.
I was right there with you. You were not alone. But
Thank
also
you.
very quickly learned that shaming people is never going to do anything. And in fact, it's probably going to do the opposite. And so, you can keep fighting and keep trying and keep doing that. But it fundamentally goes against, how humans are, and, meeting people where they're at. I think that's the most important is, not everybody has all this knowledge yet or has the ability or has the interest in wanting to change and upheave their entire lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think that is one thing that since the very beginning of Sustainable Sabs, I've been really trying to remember and root myself in, is the ripple effect and empowering and inspiring change versus forcing it, because forcing change, maybe 4, 5, 10 people will change. But when you inspire somebody to make changes on their own and they do that and they're like, whoa, that was like pretty easy. And I feel really good about doing that. And I did that on my own. Then maybe there's another step that they'll take, or maybe they'll talk to a friend about it, or maybe they'll make sure that they're voting in local elections, or, whatever it is that they can do to take action. And that ends up becoming so much more powerful, even though, you think that like forcing it and talking to people about it all the time is going to make change happen. Sometimes you need to let go, and you need to not hold so tightly onto this idea of controlling other people, and just letting things fall where they may. And there's going to be plenty of people who are not going to want to do anything, but there is that cohort of people who are going to take it upon themselves to make change. And even within my own family, they, I want to say like a couple years ago or something, they every time they went to a restaurant, they would say, no plastic straw, please. And so now every time they go to a restaurant, they always say no straw. And that wasn't me forcing them to do anything. That was me, when I went out to eat with them, I would ask for myself no straw. And they would be like, hey, yeah, actually, I don't need a straw either. And even when I'm not eating with them now, they still ask for no straw. So that always feels like a little, as small as it may be, it still feels like a little win to me.
Because it's making someone think differently. It's helping us all to evolve on things that we weren't generally taught, because you're not taught to be sustainable in a capitalist system. Like that's not the default, turns out. Mm-hmm. And so even those small things, which in the beginning, I remember I was just, my obsession with being like a perfect vegan and perfect environmentalist was out of control for a short time. And I remember going to the bar and forgetting to not ask for a straw and getting a straw, and I almost cried. I was like, I have failed. This is it. I am a fraud. And now I say it out loud and I'm just like, Jesus, oh boy. But at the time I felt terrible. I was like, I can't post online about caring about the environment. I have a straw in my drink. So dramatic. Mm-hmm. And that took a bit to get through.
Yeah. I will never forget the story I have of my dad was visiting, well, my parents were visiting me when I was still a student in Boston. And there was a bakery next door, and my dad brought a loaf back from the bakery in a paper bag. And I was like, why didn't you bring a reusable bag? I was so upset. Oh my God, that was so embarrassing when I think back on it. But obviously we live and we learn.
Yep.
I have learned a lot. You see the articles about how there were airplanes flying during 2020 that had no passengers, that just like needed to fly for whatever reason. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, the waiter who put a straw in my cup accidentally is probably not as bad as I think it actually is.
Yeah.
Again, individual action, I'm never going to knock it, but it's important to also look at the bigger picture.
Right. And know that those little moments aren't world ending. It's important, or because you're just going to burn out. It's not going to be enjoyable at all.
For sure.
So one of the things you post about a lot on Instagram, which I adore, is fashion and fashion inspiration. Has that always been something that's important to you, that you've had fun with, or is that, where did that come from? Because I love your videos about your outfits for the day or sustainable fashion. Like, they're so fun.
Thank you.
They're so fun.
So back in, I'm going to say maybe I was 16, maybe when I was 17. I went to visit my grandparents' house in Paris, and my grandmother has always been a hoarder. And the house that I'm in was the house that my mom grew up in, my aunt and uncle also grew up in, and my grandmother never threw any of their clothes away. So it's this, 2-story house on the outskirts of Paris with just at least 8 or 9 or 10 closets worth of clothing. And my grandma also worked at a lot of fashion stores. in Paris when she was younger. And so,
oh my gosh, what a shopping experience to go through that house.
let me tell you, it was
Oh,
always, anytime I visited, I would like bring half a luggage,
yes.
have empty luggage so that I could just like take things back. Obviously, all honoring the clothes that she has, but she had so much. And so like over the years, obviously I'm so grateful that I could have clothing that I didn't have to pay for. But after a while, I and thinking about it a lot more, I really started to recognize that, hey, there's a lot of meaning behind being able to wear all of these clothes that, my grandma has. And some of it is my aunt's, some of it is my mom's, some of it's my grandpa's. But yeah, I think that is kind of where my probably style inspiration came from. And then, yeah, just I think on social media in the last couple of years, ever since Instagram started framing itself as a shopping platform versus just a social media platform.
Yeah.
I am just so annoyed with all the hauls and all the Shein and all the Zara and all the H&M.
I just can't.
Yeah, it's really a lot. And I have really don't see many content creators who are just like actively re-wearing their clothing and proudly re-wearing their clothing. I definitely do see some, but it's definitely not the mainstream by any means. And so in making more fashion videos and talking more about sustainable fashion, because fashion in and of itself is, I think, one of the first intersectional environmentalist issues that I really resonated with or really started to deep dive into, because when you look at sustainable fashion, it can't just be that it's using organic cotton. Like if the workers who are making it are making 2 cents a piece of clothing.
Or if that organic cotton shirt is, $150 a shirt.
Exactly. And so, really recognizing that there are so many different issues at play when it comes to the fashion industry and the fashion movement, and knowing that like I can talk about it and discourage people from not even discourage people from shopping at certain places, because I want to recognize that like not everybody is able to buy sustainable fashion all the time, but even just recognizing that we need to shop a lot less. Like we need to shop so much less and we need to shop a lot more secondhand. So hopefully in talking about it more and in showing people that I rewear my clothes all the time. Like I have this one skirt that like everybody and their mother has seen it at this point, and I'm never going to stop wearing it because I love it so much. But like I remember on my feed, like there were 4 images of me in a row of me like wearing that skirt. And sometimes I'm like, is this weird? Are people getting bored? But also I'm like, no, we need more people doing this. I'm just a normal human wearing my clothes.
I really love it. It has inspired me. I don't do as many videos with, kind of like old outfit of the day, but you've inspired me to do that more, because I similarly was just starting to be like, I'm wearing my favorites like again and again and again here. And it being a content creator at first, that was like, I was like, shit, I just wore this shirt in the reel I did the other day or whatever. Now I'm like, yeah, this is the same shirt. I picked this up off the floor this morning. Like that is just how it goes. I have 3 wedding dresses that I rotate between for every wedding for the last 4 or 5 years now. And I'm like, everyone has seen all of them. And that's just part of it.
Yeah. I have a cousin's wedding coming up in December, and for the rehearsal dinner, I'm gonna wear my aunt's dress. Aunt, who is the mother of the cousin who's getting married. Wearing that for the rehearsal, not reception. Wearing that for the rehearsal dinner, so vintage. And then for the actual wedding, it's like a black tie event. So I'm wearing my prom dress, which is very exciting. But also like, I wore it once. Spent a lot of money on it. Why am I just going to let it sit in the closet?
Hell yeah.
So
that's amazing.
Nobody's seen it in 9 years. So
I had a bunch of dresses from homecomings and proms collected for a few years, and I realized that they had just been sitting there. And I'm actually living back in my hometown, and the high school I went to started this program where they, take donated dresses or suits or formal wear, and then kids can rent them out to use them for the night so they don't have to buy anything, which I love. So I was like, oh, yes, take my dresses. Here you go. Now I feel like they're going somewhere. And I'm like, why didn't I keep one though? I'm like usually I get rid of shit and I'm like, feel so much better. This is one of the only times I've kicked myself a little bit. Like, why did I get rid of my senior dress though? That would have been great in like the Halloween bucket or the formal wear or something. Maybe I'll sneak in and get it back.
Yes. Oh, has nobody like taken it for forever? Because I feel like if somebody.
No, it's just hanging there still. I saw it when I was teaching yoga at the school last year. I was like, oh, that's my prom dress. I kind of want it back, but that feels superficial.
I mean, maybe if you made a donation to the organization who's doing that and then you took it back, that probably would be okay. And also knowing that there are so many people who have been able to wear it during the time that you're not like actively wearing the dress.
Yes.
Too.
Yes. Maybe hearing you makes me want it even more. So I'm gonna have to contemplate that. I'm excited. I'm hoping you'll do videos or there'll be content. I'm excited to see the prom dress.
I definitely will. And actually it's a real bummer because on prom night, there was a flash flood. And so I didn't actually get to take any photos. And I remember going to prom, the streets were flooding. So I had to like drive to the local Home Depot to get picked up at my prom date. And I went to my prom in rain boots. Obviously I had heels to change into, but these purple lilac rain boots.
Oh, wow. So this is like a real redemption story for this dress.
It is. I'm very excited for it.
So excited to see it. I love that.
Yeah.
I really love that. So given all of the amazing work that you do and the content you create, the things you're involved in, it's all truly amazing and inspiring. And I'm really glad to have people like you to kind of like inspire the rest of us trying to do the same. But I'm curious, how do you take care of yourself with all of that?
A beautiful question.
Yeah, and I just want to frame it too that this is not coming from someone who's like, I've got it figured out. Like I definitely don't have this perfected, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I have been getting a lot better at setting boundaries. I think I overextend myself too much, and that has been a forever issue of mine. And just not even like vocally necessarily, but making sure that I am building in more Sabs days into my calendar, because I will just overbook myself and I will have, I'll see 4 different friends on a weekend when it's like, wait, I wanted to have a day to myself. So
yes,
establishing those boundaries, setting some Sabs days aside, remembering to slow down, because I think that we often operate with urgency. And at times that we don't really need to be operating with such urgency. And, going to the farmer's market, moving my body, eating the rainbow, staying hydrated, getting sleep, and spending time with my friends and, calling my loved ones, eating good food. That's how I take care of myself.
Really beautiful. Did you have anything else to share with listeners that I didn't give you space to do so?
I wanted to ask how you've been taking care of yourself.
Ooh, get turned on the interviewer. It's funny. I genuinely do relate to what you're saying about overextending yourself and learning to set boundaries, because that is something I have also historically always really maxed myself out. And it's been like, I'm a conscious living coach, but I'm running around like a crazy person. And that has been something the phrase practice what I preach has been in my mind a lot lately. So I actually just backed off of 1, potentially 2 volunteer groups I'm a part of that I love. And it was really hard. They're doing good work in the community, but I'm also a part of like 3 others. So I just was like, where can I cut some here? I've been trying to be more intentional about actually putting in my calendar, like time for me, like seeing that on my calendar, and then nobody can book a Calendly appointment around it, or no one can do this. And I'm like, oh, guess I have a date with me. Can't cancel that. So like, I need visual cues to remind myself to chill the hell out, really. So drawing better boundaries and giving myself more allotted time. I live and die by my Gmail calendar. I hate to admit it, but if it's already in there, then I'm much more likely to live by it.
I'm also, love the Cal invites.
Yes, so nice. And definitely the same foundational things. I'm, in Minnesota, so we're transitioning to winter pretty aggressively right now, and the season changes hard. And I think in summer, I'm just like, it's so much easier to be like, everything's great, it's beautiful, I live in this beautiful place in northern Minnesota. And then winter hits and I'm like, oh yeah, I have to be a little bit more intentional with my habits. I do have to make sure I'm drinking enough water. I do have to make sure I'm moving my body really intentionally, because I'm not necessarily just like out with friends more because it's cold. So getting back into some of the foundational habits during this season is going to be important. And I'm kind of in the midst of figuring that out. Thanks for asking.
Of course. You did ask if there's anything else I wanted to say, and I did want to just plug IE real quick.
Yeah, please.
We're at Intersectional Environmentalist on Instagram. Check out Earth Sessions at earthsessions.ie on Instagram. Check out the Joy Report.
Earth Sessions have its own Instagram. Okay, I'll have to check that out.
That too, yes.
Okay.
We have the Joy Report on Spotify and Apple, or just check out our website, intersectionalenvironmentalist.com. And then for me personally, I'm at Sustainable Sabs on Instagram, Sustainable Sabs on YouTube, and sustainablesabs.com.
Perfect. I know people will want to connect with you. I really enjoyed chatting. I hope we can continue to connect in the future and maybe collaborate in fun ways. I love finding other content creators that I vibe with. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been so nice chatting, and I'm glad that you're finding new ways to take care of yourself.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Consciously Clueless. If you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, put it on social media. Don't forget to tag me. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods, leave a review. Reviews and shares help more people to see the podcast and join in on the fun. If you want to make sure to stay up to date on future episodes, follow me at Consciously Carly on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or Pinterest, and head to consciouslycarly.com to sign up for the newsletter. Ready for more conscious living content? Check out patreon.com/consciouslycarly and join the exclusive community over there. And finally, if you're ready to take better care of yourself and the world, let's work together. Click the link in the show notes to head to the website, find out more, and schedule a free discovery call with me. Chat soon. This podcast is supported by Will's Vegan Store. Will's Vegan Store has been a vegan company at the front of vegan clothing and sustainable fashion since they launched in 2013 by their founder, Will Green. They produce the most beautiful, vegan, sustainably made shoes, clothing, and accessories. I have been obsessed with this brand for years now. They were one of the first vegan brands that I really made the switch to. It can be hard to thrift shoes, but I love knowing that if I'm going to purchase a pair of shoes from Will's Vegan Store, they are going to be ethically made, their workers are protected, they don't use plastic packaging, they're delivered in an environmentally friendly way. It's truly the most amazing company to support. So if you're ready to try them yourself, hit the link in the show notes so they know that I sent you.